Noise is getting louder about this Heat team and how good or bad they actually are. In the midst of a 4-game losing streak, how much are Bam Adebayo and Tyler Herro really to blame?
That's what we're about to find out.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Whether you're tuning in on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app, thanks for making us your first listen every day. Join the Cookie Gang, become an everydayer. That means subscribing, tuning in every day, Monday through Friday, and signing up for the Everydayer Club with the link in the show notes. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. I'm Wes Goldberg, host of Locked On NBA Daily and Real GM Radio. I'm here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day, and we have a bunch to get to today. But David, things not going awesome for the Heat right now, who have lost 4 straight games. They were eliminated from the NBA Cup on Tuesday night. They started at 11-6, but since then they have fallen to 14-11 on the season. And I just want to jump right into the meat of this thing. A lot of people are pointing to Tyler Herro's return as the reason. Fans are. Brian Windhorst today on his podcast said that since Tyler Herro's return, guys like Kel'el and Jaime Jaquez Jr. have sort of lost their mojo. Dan Le Batard is saying this is a disaster scenario for Tyler Herro. So there's a lot of people, from listeners of this show, national people, who are starting to point to Tyler Herro as the inflection point of a season that was going great and since then isn't going so great. And even, David, you brought it up on the post-game show after that loss to the Magic. You asked whether or not it was time to start bringing Tyler Herro off the bench. There's a lot to get to here, and I thought we could do a whole episode just sort of exploring whether or not Tyler Herro is to blame. But I guess I'll just ask you bluntly, is Tyler Herro to blame?
I don't think so. I don't think it's just him. We keep making the same point, but I think it bears repeating. It is, and I like the phrase you used, an inflection point. Things started to go in the wrong direction once Tyler returned, and we knew there was always going to be an adjustment. We tend to think of it as, oh, how's Tyler going to fit in? And I think that was the question a lot of us had before his return, is how was he going to fit into this offense? Because the offense was running at such a high level and it was working so well. And so the idea is, well, knowing what we do of Tyler and his career, was he going to be able to fit into that brand of offense and play at the level that we were accustomed to seeing him, and at the level that we've seen this team operate over the first few weeks of the season without him in the lineup? So I think that's a big thing to consider, but also the flip side of that is, how does the rest of the team adjust? And maybe that's a point that I personally didn't give enough thought to, because Windhorst's comment about losing mojo does seem to kind of align with where this team has gone, from that 11-6 start that you mentioned, and then 3 of 5 over their next 8 games. That's unfortunate because it's just happened to coincide with Tyler's return, but you can see that there is an impact. And that seems like it makes perfect sense. You're trying to incorporate an all-star player who averages 24 points per game, et cetera, into this offense, but it's going to have a trickle-down effect. It's not just about whether or not he can put up similar numbers, which he hasn't, but it's also how that kind of impacts everybody else, because he is so ball dominant, because he's going to take up a big chunk of the offense. How is that going to affect Norm Powell? How does it affect Jaime Jaquez? How does it affect the rest of the bench? And we talked about it in the last episode, Kel'el having to be kind of set back to the bench, because once you welcome Tyler back, it forces Eric Spoelstra to make different lineup rotations, and how do you incorporate your star player in Tyler, and then have to, find ways for other players to make an impact off the bench or in a different type of rotation. So I don't think he's necessarily to blame, but I would be ignorant to not point out that I think it is going to have a long sweeping effect on everybody on this roster. So the team does look worse. It's not tied directly to him, but he has made an impact on this team once he returned, because, again, players are going to have to learn to adjust to playing alongside Herro, just as he's making the adjustment to play alongside them in this new contextualized offense from the Miami Heat. So it's just I think it's an unfair discussion to say he's necessarily the blame. It's just the way it's aligned and coincided that his return has brought about these changes that look like this team is worse than what we had seen them earlier in the season.
And to your point, we can't ignore that, right? Now,
Absolutely.
It's one thing happens, another thing happens. Now, our job here is to determine whether or not that's causal or coincidental.
Correct.
And I'm going to say this right up at the top. I know what my role here is. I understand I'm the Tyler Herro apologist. I get it. I have built that brand up for myself. And I did a deep dive into the numbers, a lot of the advanced metrics, a lot of the on-off stuff. And I wanted to do it with an open mind. And I'm curious, like, what is going on with this Heat team? And is it because Tyler Herro came back? Because if it is, then there's some major questions that the Heat have to answer. Number one, is Tyler Herro a part of what we want to do going forward? Number two, do we want to pay him? And number three, if the answer to both of those things is no,
right,
then what are we doing with him? And who are we trading him to? Because that's that's the next option. And but before I think we can even kind of get to that, you have to understand, and the front office can kind of get to that. I think the exercise that I am doing, I think, is what the front office is probably trying to do right now too. Is okay, how much is Tyler Herro to blame versus this is a small sample size. I think that's worth talking about and repeating over and over again. Like, let's not blow anything out of proportion too much here, but it is jarring because of how well the team was playing versus how poorly they're playing in the first 3-game losing streak and the first 4-game losing streak of the season, coinciding with his return. Now, I will say this, he wasn't in 2 of those games.
Yeah.
He didn't play 2 of those games, and nobody was blaming Tyler Herro for losses in Orlando or in Sacramento before the NBA Cup loss in Orlando because Tyler Herro didn't play in those games. So that's worth repeating as well. But when I looked at the numbers, I started here, just looking at the schedule that the Heat have played. They have played a tough schedule all season long, but the defenses that they've played since Tyler Herro has come back in the games that he's played in, 7th in defensive rating, 22nd in defensive rating, 4th, 25th, 7th, and 5th. They won the games against those bottom-ranked defenses. But other than that, they had to play the 7th-ranked defense, the 4th-ranked defense, the 7th-ranked defense, and the 5th-ranked defense, and they only won 1 of those games. Those are tough defenses. But again, the Heat have played a tough schedule all season long, and they managed to win a lot of those games. So I'm like, okay, so is that really an excuse, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So then I went into the shooting numbers. And this to me was really interesting, David, and I apologize in advance because I'm about to read a bunch of numbers. So people listening and watching, don't let your eyes glaze over because I think this is a really important point. In terms of ruining Jaime's mojo, 57 minutes with Tyler Herro on the court, Jaime is shooting 67% at the rim. In the 644 minutes he played without Tyler Herro, he was scoring 76% at the rim. And I'm looking specifically at the rim numbers and the percentages because this to me is really instructive. Tyler Herro is not impacting whether or not you're making your layups or not. Maybe he's a factor in how many layups you get, but he's not a factor in if you're making the ones you already have. And so I wanted to start there. So Jaime, without Herro, is shooting 76% at the rim. With him in 57 minutes, very small sample size, 67%. Tyler Herro has nothing to do with that. That's just random noise. And maybe a groin injury for Jaime. Davion Mitchell, 135 minutes with Herro, 45% at the rim. Nearly 600 minutes without Herro, 69% at the rim. That is a major drop-off. Andrew Wiggins, rim percent, 115 minutes with Herro, 56%. 600 minutes without Tyler Herro, 67%. An 11% drop with Herro on the court at the rim. Norman Powell at the rim with Herro, 60%. Still pretty good. Without Herro, 66%. It was better. Tyler Herro has nothing to do with players finishing their layups. And I look at those numbers and I say, well, then how is it that everybody is worse at finishing with layups when they're on the court with Tyler Herro? And I think part of this, to me, is more coincidental. Don't focus on the numbers with Herro. Focus on the numbers without Herro. 76%, 69%, 67%, 66%. Those are crazy efficiency numbers. The Heat were finishing over their head. And I think they've cooled down and come back down to earth. Either, and it just so happens that happened with Tyler Herro's return, but also against some of these really good defenses. So I was trying to figure out what the reasoning behind this was, and that's the only thing I couldn't find a causal tissue between Tyler Herro's return and all of a sudden guys not finishing layups as well. But wait, I want your response after the break.
Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time. Listen, the World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994. And with 48 teams for the first time ever, it's going to be massive. But let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part. And that's why the Game Time app is clutch. It finally gives fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Game Time, you can track price drops in real time. You can get alerts when great seats open up and buy tickets in the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands, and it makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. You just pull up the app, and the layout makes it so simple to scroll through matchups and compare seat views. You can pick a game, tap a section, and have your tickets locked in within minutes. No confusion, no hunting for fine print, and no hidden fees. You know exactly what you're going to be paying for, so you don't have to worry about the final price tag being more than you expected, because you'll know with Game Time, and that helps you find the cheapest seats available, and you can track those price drops as games get more and more interesting, or maybe it's a part of group play where maybe it could be a country that doesn't necessarily have such a fervent fan base, and maybe those tickets drop in price, but you still get to be part of the World Cup experience, because that's what it's really about. And with lots of games throughout South Florida, you're going to want to be part of all the action. So take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets, and every match, concert, or event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA. Get $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, download the app, make an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA. You get $20 off your first purchase. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. That's Game Time. Today's episode is also brought to you by Quo. New year, new systems. And this is the time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of running a business and say, there's got to be a better way. And there is, because today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Quo, the smarter way to run your business communications. If you're ready to make your workday smoother and keep customers connected without the headaches, Quo makes upgrading your setup easier than ever. It's a streamlined system that makes such a big difference when communicating with customers. You can have calls, texts, and voicemails in one clean view to keep everything organized and help you stay responsive. And their AI summaries and call logging can feel like having an assistant keeping track of every detail. It's so easy to use. And that's why you can make this the year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. So try Quo for free. Plus, you get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/LockedOnNBA. That's QUO.com/LockedOnNBA. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. We'll be right back.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen of the day. Thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. You already live your team every day. Now take it up a level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club today and get Locked On Heat with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more, all for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to lockedonheat.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to learn more. David, your reaction to the numbers I shared with you before the break.
Makes perfect sense. I understand the fact that you're facing tougher defenses, and not just tougher defense, even those more porous defenses probably have a lot more film to scout and to prepare for a Heat offense that I think took everybody off guard. Like, it didn't just take us as people who cover this team and knew even going into the season that they were going to have to adjust the way they play based on the personnel. But I think a lot of teams just weren't prepared for what Miami were doing early in the season. But I'm curious, and maybe you have this information or not, how many drives per game is the team averaging since Tyler's return? Because you're talking about these percentages at the rim, and I wonder whether or not their offense has changed, as you would expect it to, based on trying to incorporate him back into the lineup. So while I understand the numbers are down across the board, I do think Tyler has changed the offense ever so slightly in his return. Not in any way that was purposeful or trying to disrupt what other teammates are accomplishing there, but based on who he is as a scorer and the ball dominant player that he has been and should be, you would think that the offense would have to change and adjust just a little bit to incorporate him into it. And you wonder whether or not with less drives per game, maybe those percentages would go down. The flow of the offense might go down. Or because a defender can key in on what Tyler does, maybe you can sag off him just a bit. And
so
maybe
I'm gonna cut you off. I did look up the number. They're actually driving more with Tyler Herro.
They're driving more. So maybe that's impacting the numbers. I don't know.
61.8 drives per game versus 60.8 drives per game. It's the same.
Okay, so it's not much. It's not much.
It's the same.
Right. So there's no correlation there. I mean,
to take that another step further, like, is Tyler Herro changing fundamentally what this offense is? Here's Miami's pace with Tyler Herro on the court. 105.6. Here's Miami's pace with Tyler Herro off the court all season long. 105.7.
Huge
it's the same.
Difference.
It's the same. They're playing with the same tempo. People say, oh, well, playing with the same tempo, but are you getting in as many transition opportunities? Because that's what I looked up. You were talking about drives. I thought transition opportunities. Well, maybe that's what's limiting these shooting percentages at the rim. Like, the shots that they're getting are just harder because they're not getting out on the break as much. Nope.
Right.
The Heat actually get 2% more transition opportunities with Tyler Herro on the court than when he's off the court. He's actually additive to this offense. It doesn't feel like that all the time, but I think some of this is selection bias a little bit for people who are wondering whether or not Tyler Herro is a good influence or a negative influence on this team. We see the mistakes that he makes, the time where he doesn't rip it from three-point range. I talked about that in our post-game show after the Magic loss. There's just threes that I wish he would take, but we're so, I think, hyper-focused on the things that he doesn't do that maybe look a little funky. And by the way, it should look funky. He's still, and admittedly so, figuring out this offense. He didn't even get to play it in training camp. He's figuring this out on the fly. The fact that it is a little awkward should be expected. The question isn't whether or not it's been an awkward fit. And again, some of the numbers show you that it's not even an awkward fit. But I do think anecdotally, like watching these games, it does feel like an awkward fit a little bit. I'm admitting that. Wasn't that the expectation? The question should not be, has it been awkward? The question is, can it work going forward? That's the only question that matters. And that's what I'm trying to figure out here. I think eventually the shooting will come back. The shooting will come back. By the way, another shooting number. Simone Fontecchio. Before Tyler Herro, 42% from three. Since Tyler Herro returned, 22% from three. What does Tyler have to do with any of that? Nothing. You could argue that maybe the shot quality isn't as good. That has nothing to do with a 20% dip in three-point efficiency for a guy who's a career 36+% three-point shooter. There's no reason for him to be shooting 22% on threes, regardless of what the looks are. So some of this is just weird timing slump stuff. Yeah. And I will remind people, we were already having a conversation about teams catching up to Miami's offense before Herro got back. This was already happening. After games against, even mid-season against teams like the Lakers, we were wondering whether or not teams were starting to figure out Miami's offense. So, Herro comes back November 24th against Dallas. Miami scores 106 points in that game in a win that Tyler Herro played really well in. But people are, they're playing a little slow. They score 106 points in a win against Milwaukee. Right. Oh boy. Herro's slowing down the offense. Before that, they scored 127 against Philly and 143 against Chicago. Now, that Dallas defense is very different than that Chicago defense.
Yes.
But before that, they scored 110 against the Warriors, 115 against the Knicks, 116 against Cleveland. They were starting to get slowed down a little bit already.
Yeah, we did see that.
Yeah, we were already talking about it before Herro came back, and we were actually talking about it in regards to, boy, it'll be nice when Herro comes back because it seems like they can use another wrinkle in their offense.
I don't know. You're right about the eye test kind of showing that maybe there are times when it looks a little off, and that's unfortunate. And again, all these coincidences have just been very, and I hate to use the same word, but it just feels like it's so unfortunate that with Tyler's return, it was kind of coinciding with, as you just pointed out, teams already figuring out Miami's offense, players not shooting as well, specifically Fontecchio, Jaquez, whoever. Like, it's just all kind of been a perfect crap storm, for lack of a better phrase, and it's all tied to Tyler's return, and it shouldn't be. Listen, I made the point following the recap of the tournament game that maybe he should come off the bench. I think in the moment, I felt like maybe Miami could certainly use a boost to their offense because they weren't getting it from Fontecchio. They're not getting it with Pelle Larsson, who's probably going to miss time, and Jaime's numbers clearly a little bit, and that maybe Ware needed to be playing a little bit more. I don't know. It's not realistic. Like, the truth is, there's no chance that Tyler's going to really be sent to the bench. I don't think Spo is going to have that conversation with Tyler and say, look, you know what? I think this team is better with you coming up.
Do you think that would fix things, though, still? Like, regardless of whether or not it would ever happen?
Yes and no. Like, I don't want to be wishy-washy about it, but I think the bench needs to play better, and Tyler going to the bench would certainly help, and maybe Kel'el going back to the starting lineup where he once flourished not that long ago would certainly help the team also. But I also kind of tend to think that, as you pointed out, the numbers are just kind of really tanking in a way that we didn't expect him to. And maybe they'll get better because Tyler should, in theory, add more to this offense. And so if you can get through these kind of growing pains, when you come out the other side of this all, this is going to be an even better team we saw early in the season. At least that's in theory.
And that's the thing, again, that the Heat have to figure out. Is that the truth or is it not the truth? And I go back to the shooting numbers. Jaime's not going to shoot 76% at the rim all season. He's shooting 67% at the rim with Tyler Herro. That's where he was at for his career at the rim, was 67%. Now, I think he's shot 67% from his career at the rim. I think that'll be better, though. I think in this offense, he should kind of even out at 70-ish% at the rim. To me, when these guys come out of these little slumps, again, Jaime has the groin injury. Davion has just not been able to hit a layup. Wiggins has been really bad near the basket, where he was really good at the basket to start the year. Norm Powell was out with a foot injury, and Davion Mitchell was out with an injury as well. So the guys now, this roster is mostly healthy with the exception of Pelle Larsson. This team is mostly healthy. I think we're going to learn a lot going forward because they lost 4 straight games in games. Tyler Herro missed 2, Davion missed 1, and Norman Powell missed 1 against some tough-ish teams. The Sacramento Kings game on the second night of a back-to-back notwithstanding. But these games going forward between now and the rest of the calendar year, we're going to learn about this offense, I think, and about Tyler Herro's fit and about this team. I think we'll get a better, clearer picture of what this team is all about. You play Toronto on Monday, and then it's Brooklyn, Boston, the Knicks, Toronto, Atlanta, Indiana, and Denver. Some good teams, some bad teams, some elite teams in that mix. That is a good stretch of different kinds of opponents, different styles, different fights, different quality type of opponents. We're going to get a clearer picture about what this Heat team really is. So is Tyler Herro to blame? I think it's too soon. I think it's too soon to conclude that he is. Right. But it is something worth monitoring. And I think that's a fair way to put that right now. We don't have to have all the answers right now, but to make any dramatic decisions based on a 4-game sample size where Herro wasn't even in 2 of those games, for people to start blaming Tyler Herro now, I think is very premature. Last word on this, David, and then we'll go to our next segment.
No, I think it's a good point. I think he is just working his way back into it. The team is adjusting. They're dealing with injuries, dealing with lots of different factors that are all kind of just tying together at the wrong time. But I still believe that Tyler is going to continue to get better, and the rest of the team will continue to adjust accordingly. And I think it will eventually improve. Even with this tough challenge or the potential tough challenges up ahead, I think this team is going to continue to get better should they stay healthy and be able to work through these kinks.
What about Bam? Is he to blame? We'll talk about that next.
Today's episode is brought to you by ZocDoc. Guys, it's 2025, almost 2026. And those days of waiting for someone to become a full-blown emergency before you go see a doctor, well, they're over. No more walking it off for 6 months, or no more pretending that weird shoulder stiffness is just sleeping wrong. It's time to take your health seriously. And ZocDoc makes that easier than ever, because staying healthy is more than just hitting the gym or eating right. It's about actually getting things checked out when something feels off. Using ZocDoc makes scheduling easier. You can search for in-network doctors and book right in the appointment. Real appointment times are listed, including same-day visits. No more back and forth phone calls or waiting weeks to be seen. It makes everything simple to keep your health a priority, even with your busy schedule. So stop putting off your doctor's appointments and get the care you need. Go to ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNBA to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNBA. ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNBA. We'll be right back.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. The best way to support the show, hit that subscribe button on YouTube, follow us on your podcast app. All right, we talked a lot about Tyler Herro and whether or not he's to blame. There's still a segment of Heat fans that want to blame Bam Adebayo for not doing enough. David, I don't even know if I don't want to do the whole this is what Bam does and try to explain the value of Bam to people who don't care. Like, we've done that 100 million times on this show. I will just point to one stat. The Heat are 9.3 points per 100 possessions better with Bam Adebayo on the court than when he's off the court. Easily and by far, with a bullet, the best mark on the Miami Heat team. He is, by the metrics, the Heat's best player this season. I don't know what else to say anymore.
Yeah, it's a strange conversation, and I think context makes so much difference in having this conversation about Bam as opposed to even maybe what we just talked about Tyler, because again, his return changed the way this team played, but all their changes were taking place simultaneously. Bam has been the consistent through line in all of this, and yes, he did miss time, but he came back and the team looked better, and things are. I don't think it's any concern to me. Looking at Bam and what he provides for this group, I don't know. You have to be able to just appreciate what he does. And this isn't necessarily like, as some people have, said about us, that we're apologists or that we're on his payroll. I don't know what. I don't even know how to respond to that.
I wish I was on his payroll.
Yeah, it would make things a lot easier. We'd probably be putting out a lot less content if that was the case. But you know what? I'll sell out if that's what it takes. We'll be locked on Bam in a heartbeat if we're on that payroll. So, having said that, I think we just see the numbers and we also see his impact in a way that's pretty consistent. It might not be what you're looking for as a fan, and that I totally get. If you want him to be a 30-point per game scorer or to have more 30-point games, I get it. And you'd wish for that to happen. Believe me, I think we would too. I think Bam would wish for that. But to not recognize his impact is also, I think, kind of pointless because he does make things better, as you said, by a far margin. He's more effective and efficient and less minutes per game now than he has been throughout his career. He's putting up similar numbers. He's adjusted his offense in a way that nobody else has by virtue of putting up nearly 5 3-point attempts per game now. For years, even he was frustrated with the questioning, like, oh, when are you going to incorporate 3-point shot? He's like, I don't know. I'll keep working on it. Well, guess what? We're here. He is a 3-point shooter. And yes, the numbers have dipped a little bit. He's at 34% on the year. That's not great, but it's not so horrific where you're wondering why the hell he's putting up those shots in the first place.
It's a miracle for a guy who was a run and jump athlete coming out of Kentucky, who was barely playing in college and wasn't shooting threes at all for the start. Now he's a decent 3-point shooter. Like, he deserves credit for developing that, not blame for only shooting 34% from three. I mean, on legitimate volume.
I think everybody wanted him to be Brook Lopez, where he's like having this transformation all of a sudden from a post threat to putting up, 38 points per, 38%.
And that was a very late career transformation from Brook Lopez. It took a long time. I understand the other part of this too with the money, right? Like, he's not the extension kicks in next year, and I understand, hey, you're going to pay a guy $49-50 million a year. He should be your number one option. And I would say maybe that used to be the case, not anymore. These are the guys who are going to be making similar money to Bam next year. Evan Mobley, Jamal Murray, De'Aaron Fox, Jaren Jackson Jr., Zach LaVine. Those are the guys right around Bam next year in terms of money. Mm-hmm. None of those guys are bona fide number one options. They're all either second or even tertiary offensive options. And none of them are as good defensively as Bam is. Right? Like, even Jamal Murray, as great as he is offensively, would you rather have Jamal Murray or Bam Adebayo on your team? I think that's maybe has more of a matter of taste or what the rest of your roster looks like, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't think you look at Jamal Murray as the guy who could be the number one option on a championship team, just like you don't look at Bam as the number one offensive option on a championship team. This is what second bananas get paid. And I've made this point 100 times, but I'll make it again. If Bam were playing with a 27 point per game score, nobody would talk about him averaging 19 points per game. Nobody would talk about it because they would instead focus on all the other things that he does at a really high level. He's a winning player. He's the kind of player every organization would love to have. And and as good as he's been for Miami, he would be even better if he were to play with the number one option. Not even mentioning a guy like, say, Luka, who could actually just spoon feed him easy looks. Because Bam, yes, you can look at his numbers. You could just look at the box score averages over his career and say, he just doesn't get better. It's 19 points per game every single year. Okay, let's put context into that. When Bam first started averaging all of that, he was a pick and roll finisher, a lob threat, a guy dunking all the time. That's what he was. And then during the COVID year, starts to develop that dribble handoff game. And that's the crux of his entire offense. Everything was triggered off that dribble handoff. He could get to the Kelly keeper. He can get to all that kind of stuff from the dribble handoff. Then they take that away. They say, hey, Bam, now we need you to go into the post. He starts doing that. They take that away. They say, hey, Bam, we actually need you to develop that free throw line jumper. He's like, okay, I'll do that. He develops it. He's doing that. Then last year, when they try to get away from those mid-range shots, they start to take that away from him. And they say, hey, we need you to develop a three-point shot. Okay, I'll do that. Oh, and now we're going to play an entirely new offense. We're going to scrap the offense you always knew. We're not even going to call plays for you. And the bread and butter for everybody that plays your position, the pick and roll, we're not going to do that anymore. You don't get that. We're not going to we barely spoon fed you before, and now you're not even allowed in the kitchen. Like, we're not even doing that. Good luck. And he's figured out a way to still average 19 points per game every single year. He deserves so much freaking credit for this. I don't know if it comes off as us being on the payroll. Fine, man. I call it the way I see it. I have nothing but respect for this guy. And if you think you need more from Bam, fine. I will say this. He's not the number one option on a championship winning team. Okay. That's what he is. And it's what he always will be. Accept it and realize that the Heat need to go get that number one option. But if you have that number one option with Bam as that number two option, that is how you build a championship team. And you don't have it without both of those guys. Because if you don't have both of those guys, then you're the Milwaukee Bucks with Giannis and nobody else. And that's not good enough. You need both of them. You got one of them in Bam. You don't have the other one yet. It's why this Heat team was so dominant when Jimmy Butler turned into that guy. But when he wasn't that guy, this team was really underwhelming and was starving for that guy. And I think this team right now, as fun as this offense has been, is still starving for that guy.
Yeah, I think that's ultimately what it comes down to. As we're having this conversation, we're talking about two players that we've never confused for superstars, or at least not in that elite level of stardom. They're not top 10, 15 players. You can make the case that both of them might be top 40 players. Maybe in Bam's case, I would skew a little higher just because of his defensive impact and everything he does to incorporate or to make any type of offense or defense work. And I think that's something else that we could add as far as Bam. Like you made the point how other teams would want it. I think 29 other teams would want a Bam Adebayo on their roster.
There's not a defense. There's not a defensive scheme you can't play with Bam, right? Even with guys like Rudy Gobert, you can't switch everything. You could switch everything with Bam. You could play drop with Bam. You could play zone with Bam. You could play blitz and help with Bam. You could play show and recover with Bam. You could do all of the different schemes with Bam. He is the most versatile defender in the league, and it's not close to me.
So we're just talking about two players that are limited and have their limitations baked in. And as such, I think fans should be a little bit more accommodating of what they do. And I think both of them will get some blame and deservedly so because of those limitations, but it's also would help to understand already we're not criticizing Giannis when he can't shoot from 20 feet out or anything like that. Or we're not criticizing Russell Westbrook at his peak when he was a little bit too ball dominant, didn't know how to share. What's that?
Yes, we were. Everybody was criticizing. A lot of people were criticizing Russell Westbrook. I understand where you're going, but that wasn't the best example.
They were winning at a high level, whatever. I mean, again, that criticism was earned though because there were limitations in his game. That's what I'm saying. Those criticisms of those star level players were deserved because you expected them to be more. It's like they're 40% of what your team does, and as such, you have to learn how to get better. You really do.
Yeah.
You're that good. You have to be able to get better because you are the most important player on this team. I would say that because Bam and Tyler are not, they just happen to be the best players on this team because it's the way this roster is constructed. You have to learn to accept that. They contribute to winning. They're going through some, growth and changes and everything else like that. But I think ultimately this team is going to be better, and it's going to be better with both of those players on it, barring any kind of change. If there's going to be a massive roster upheaval or a trade for a superstar player, Giannis, John Morant, whoever that might be, that's different. That's a different conversation to be had. But for right now, what those players provide, they're just going to be making certain adjustments, and I don't think either of them are to blame for this 4-game losing streak or the way that the offense has looked a little bit more sluggish over the last few weeks.
And that is why the Heat need to trade for Giannis. That'll do it for us today. Thanks for tuning in to Locked On Heat. Make sure you're subscribed and follow Locked On Heat so you get all the latest episodes. Find us on Twitter and Instagram at Locked On Heat. Did Locked On Heat make your Spotify Wrapped? Prove it on social media to secure a free month of our brand new Everydayer Club. Just tag our national Locked On Podcast Network account on any social platform, and we'll drop you a code. Be one of the first to join the Everydayer Club to get your favorite show ad-free and exclusive access to the members-only Discord channel. For those of you on video, we send you to our first ever 24/7 National NBA YouTube channel. On audio, make sure that you make your second listen Locked On NBA Game Night and Locked On NBA Daily.